If you ask recipients of the food stamp program how it originated and who sort of pushed it along, I don't think they would know, but that's not important. The important thing is that they benefit and they have a better quality of life.
I don't think it's an exaggeration to say that we revolutionized the food stamp program for the better. We brought in millions of people who heretofore had never heard of the program or who couldn't afford to participate.
The food stamp program was established as a safety net against hunger and malnutrition for low-income Americans and their families.
It saved me, you know, and it kept me out of the hospital, the emergency room.
Diana's food stamps help where her disability income isn't enough.
Without the food stamps, I'd have to spend cash on food. Sometimes that took away my medication money.
I don't think that any mother wants to see the children suffering and starving. But I went through that.
Ida supports herself today, but back in the 70s, the food stamp program gave her support to raise her sons.
When I applied for the food stamp benefit, it was a blessing.
Today, the program helps millions of families, seniors, people with disabilities, and low-wage working Americans afford access to enough food. Food stamps were first introduced to the American public as a pilot program during the Great Depression. Mabel McFiggin of Rochester, New York, was the first food stamp recipient.
It's your brother Van Silk right here again. Rocking Common Sense with Van Silk. I'm gonna get some Common Sense with Van Silk t-shirts made. So, as I posted a video earlier regarding blacks being migrants in the 1960s, still working the fields. Now, that documentary also portrayed a lot of white families that was poor as well, that needed to work, couldn't take care of their families, living in the woods, in the fields, just like the blacks were, traveling miles and miles to work the field. Kids, schooling, no education. But now let's get to the connecting dot. Food stamps, excuse me. The food stamp program started in the late 40s. And then as it casually went on, they preempted it again, but you had to pay, it was at one time you had to pay a certain amount of money for food stamp. I think it's like if you got $100 worth of food stamp, you had to pay a certain amount of money to get $100 worth for whatever it was then. And again, I'm going to say, it wasn't important to enact the food stamp program when it started affecting Americans all over the place, everywhere. In the 60s, they came back with it again with Senator McGovern and Bob Dole in Congress. Democrat and Republican got together and they started the food stamp program. But it was in 77 when Jimmy Carter signed the Food Stamp Act. But again, it's supposed to be about nutrition, to help families, you know, have food. But I'm trying to understand one thing. Once stop cooking at home and you're buying food from the streets, in the streets, everything's changed. You didn't have enough money to pay bills, either with bills or food. Let's go back to the Great Depression when you was just getting bread and butter and cheese. But just to make this move a little quicker, because there is a documentary that I'm gonna add the history of food stamps behind this. I want people to understand, as I was watching this, in order for them to pass that Food Stamp Act, they had to make it more like if the blacks needed it. No, all families back then that was barely making it needed food stamps. So the food stamp was never, the food stamp was never about the black community. It was about, y'all would call them, we from the ghetto, y'all would say, oh, the trailer park people. Because you had a lot of white families that was poor or just as poor. But that's their history, that's their story. But when they got it all together, the food stamps was about getting nutrition food. You'll have to excuse the tears running from the chemotherapy and everything. And families surviving. Now, I know my grandparents from the South, my grandmother didn't need no food stamps, man. They grew their own food, slaughter your own hog, slaughter your own chicken. My grandmother had 17 kids. My mother used to stretch food in the Bronx when we was little kids. She stretched it. Plus my father, my mother, and 6 kids. When the beginning was 4 and then became 6. She stressed it. She stressed it. No matter what she made, she stressed it. But just getting back to how the American values changed, that a lot of people started depending on food stamps. And I'm trying to figure out, when did it all change to where there were certain things in the beginning you couldn't get on food stamps? I wanted to know, when did it change that you was able to get damn near anything cold, sugar product, all this stuff on food stamps. And then I'm trying to figure out, how were the numbers calculated that as you look at today, you got people that got 6, 7, 8 kids, they getting $3,000 a month in food stamps. They're not working. They're not doing anything. Do I blame the Trump administration for cutting that type out of the food stamp program? Yes. But if I'm looking at it now, I see people on TikTok now starting to say, hey, better go make them rice and beans. Hey, you better have that peanut butter jelly sandwich. Hey, you ain't got to have them big meals. See, when you get accustomed to something in this country, and a lot of people got accustomed to a whole lot of things. And this country sat here because at the same time, while they was giving people all this to keep them quiet, these politicians was getting a whole lot of money for a lot of things. And that's why that system would snap. The EBT card, they came up with the EBT card. They got rid of the food coupons. And look where we at right now, 29th of October. Congress can't even get it together on extending the Affordable Care Act bill. So people ain't got to pay more money. And the food stamps, which they got money for, but Trump don't want to spend it. But you can give Argentina $42 billion. I was listening to Sean Hannity today, and Sean Hannity, you need to quit. You know damn well everything that you said today is crock. And they feed their own people a bunch of crock. And I don't like coming at nobody, but I'm just sitting up here. In America, if you got a platform, they'll pay you to say whatever you want to say, knowing that you're telling that you're lying. If you don't think all these Republicans are sitting up there right now knowing like, yo, we lying to the people, but they don't care. And that's the problem we have in America right now. They don't care. But I'm not going to drag this out. I'm going to say what I have to say. Subscribe to my channel. If you want to donate, Cash App and PayPal information is listed. But I'm going to say this. The food stamp program does have a history, and it wasn't about the black community, it was about the Americans. It was an American community issue, not just black people. Because they say, oh, food stamp because black people and minorities didn't have. No, it was a humanity community. It was a human Well, let me just say the right word. It was an American problem. Okay? It was an America problem. Period. No ifs, ands, and buts. It was a problem in America that through all the changes and everything that was going on, kids were not getting proper meals. Free school lunches, don't know what happened to that. Gone. They used to give food bank bags. I know down here in Florida, my grandkids used to get them. So it's got to be somebody with loud music. But at the end of that note, I'm going to say this. Get it together, America. We got a lot of problems. And this is just the tip of the iceberg. Van Silk, Common Sense with Van Silk. I'm out.
If you ask recipients of the food stamp program how it originated and who sort of pushed it along, I don't think they would know, but that's not important. The important thing is that they benefit and they have a better quality of life.
I don't think it's an exaggeration to say that we revolutionized the food stamp program for the better. We brought in millions of people who heretofore had never heard of the program or who couldn't afford to participate.
The food stamp program was established as a safety net against hunger and malnutrition for low-income Americans and their families.
It saved me, you know? And it kept me out of the hospital, the emergency room.
Diana's food stamps help where her disability income isn't enough.
Without the food stamps, I'd have to spend cash on food. Sometimes that took away my medication money.
I don't think that any mother wants to see the children suffering and starving. But I went through that.
Ida supports herself today, but back in the 70s, the food stamp program gave her support to raise her sons.
When I applied for the food stamp benefit, it was a blessing.
Today, the program helps millions of families, seniors, people with disabilities, and low-wage working Americans afford access to enough food. Food stamps were first introduced to the American public as a pilot program during the Great Depression. Mabel McGovern of Rochester, New York, was the first food stamp recipient. She paid $4 and got $6 worth of stamps in return. An orange stamp could buy any food, while a blue stamp was good for only what the Department of Agriculture deemed to be in surplus. That program lasted through the early 40s. Food stamps were revived in the 60s as part of the war on poverty, but Americans still had to pay for their stamp coupons, and for the poorest, that was a hardship. Many of us today probably don't remember the extreme poverty that existed in pockets of our country in the 1960s.
We saw many who died as a secondary consequence to severe malnutrition.
Dr. Aaron Shirley was part of a team of doctors that investigated.
You'd see skinny legs, skinny arms, shrunken facial features, and a bloated belly. And that's what really, as a pediatrician, is what got my attention.
The doctor's work became part of a CBS documentary hosted by Charles Kuralt called Hunger in America.
This baby is dying of starvation. He was an American. Now he is dead.
It shocked the American public.
I was watching a documentary on CBS. It was 1968, and I remember saying, why are they looking at hunger in the United States? The incident in that documentary that caught my attention was they picked up on a little boy standing alongside of the room, leaning against the wall.
Well, when you get to school, what do you have to eat there?
Yes.
You don't have anything to eat when you're at school?
No.
Television interviewers said to this little boy, "What do you think when you stand here day after day watching the other children eat and you can't join with them?" He said, "I'm ashamed."
Be ashamed?
Are you ashamed?
Yeah, be hungry.
Why are you ashamed?
I don't have no money.
I said to my family that were watching that documentary with me, it's not that little boy who should be ashamed. It's George McGovern, a United States Senator, a member of the Committee on Agriculture. So I went to the Senate the very next day and introduced a resolution to create what was the Select Committee on Nutrition and Human Needs. And for the next 10 years, that committee led the way in this country in making sure every member of Congress, every American knew about hunger in this country. Bob Dole was the ranking Republican on the committee. I was the chairman, and we worked hand in glove. We didn't play any partisan politics with this issue.
What really impressed me were the field hearings, and you saw it firsthand, and you knew it wasn't something that some network maybe dreamed up or whatever, found some isolated cases. I think we began to understand it was widespread and it needed to be addressed.
In the early 70s, while food stamps were helping to protect millions from hunger, it was clear that changes in the program could improve its efficiency and reach. Senators Dole and McGovern took the lead. They teamed with Congressman Tom Foley in the House and the Carter administration to pass the Food Stamp Reform Act of 1977. This bipartisan legislation revolutionized the program and made the program more efficient and more accessible to the poor by finally eliminating the requirement that Americans pay for a portion of their stamps.
If you didn't have, that money to put up, then you weren't eligible for the program. It didn't make any sense to me.
It was around this same time that Dr. Aaron Shirley returned to the places of severe hunger he had witnessed a decade earlier.
It was after the food stamp program had been in existence, and it was just amazing and rewarding to see some of the same people that we had interviewed, how much better they were in terms of their nutrition status and their outlook on life.
Today's food stamp program is even stronger as a result of key reforms put in place in recent years by Congress, states, and the White House. Today's program benefits 26 million Americans every month. More than half are children.
It's more pain for you to have your children to be hungry than for you to be hungry.
The program is extremely efficient and has the highest level of accuracy in its history. 98% of those who participate today are indeed eligible. Benefit transactions are simpler. Paper coupons have been replaced by debit-like EBT cards. The program is a key support for working families. It serves nearly twice the number of low-wage working Americans than those who rely on welfare.
One of the myths in the food stamp program is that it serves only those who won't work or can't work for some reason. But the opposite is true. We have more and more working families, especially families with children.
Improving nutrition is a top priority.
The food stamp program has a really aggressive nutrition education component to it, and we really do need to help people learn how to eat a nutritious diet to improve their health and overall well-being.
And the program rapidly responds in times of economic need. Nearly 2 million new households were temporarily enrolled in disaster food stamps after Hurricanes Rita, Wilma, and Katrina.
After the storm, I lost everything, and I was informed that we could apply for food stamps. I did not have any food, I did not have anything. And so I applied for food stamps, and I received food stamps for 2 months.
Food stamps have all but eliminated the severe hunger and malnutrition that we saw in the 1960s. But yet in the U.S. today, the Census Bureau estimates that more than 1 in 10 adults and 1 in 6 children don't have regular access to enough food.
Your stomach is constantly growling. it starts to hurt, be in pain. It just feels like a ball of knots.
Dr. Deborah Frank founded the GROW Clinic in Boston for malnourished children.
There is a substantial hunger problem. It's at least 1 out of 5 of the children under 3 coming through our emergency room here, and it is really frightening to me that food insecurity is so prevalent among these very young children in the critical period of brain growth.
Dr. Frank says the food stamp program is having an impact.
But I've seen when the family has gotten some food stamps that, suddenly the child comes back in a month and you say, wow, that's great weight gain, what happened?
40% of those eligible for food stamps miss out on benefits. Many don't know they're eligible. Others find the process too difficult. Even for those on food stamps, benefits can run out before the end of the month, creating tough choices about whether to buy food or pay other bills.
I have to decide on what if I want to pay the light bill or what if I want to put some food in the house. It was a hard decision.
Charities and churches provide some help, but can't fill the growing need.
We can't do it all. We're stretched. Our congregation members are stretched.
Barb Packer is head of Lutheran Food Pantry Services in Central Ohio. This pantry alone serves 6,000 people a month on average, a 25% increase over last year, and it's a struggle.
We're at the point where a lot of the small community churches, as good-hearted as these people are, they can't continue to give at the rate that they're giving to take care of the problem.
At this elementary school, there's no shortage of kids who come to school hungry.
Children come to school with stomach aches because they're hungry. Children don't perform well in school because they're hungry. They want to come to school because they're hungry and they know they're going to get a meal.
Every Friday at schools in Lincoln, Nebraska, kids receive special backpacks filled with food from the local food bank so they can eat over the weekend.
There is hunger that the backpack program exposes every week. We're currently distributing 510 backpacks every Friday afternoon. Food banks are a great support system for hungry people, but bigger answers are needed to keep people from going hungry in our country.
The food stamp program is as essential today as it was 30 years ago, and it can do more. Millions of Americans are still in need.
You're going to have to come to where the people are, see the suffering, see the effects, and how it has a rippling effect in our total society. I think the food stamp program is a must.
It's really a blessing, for the government to provide this, because a lot of people couldn't make it if it wasn't for that, because I've been there.
This year, the highly respected National Journal called the food stamp program one of the government's top successes.
Well, I started out in Congress not being a supporter of food stamps because I was one of those that believed that there was a lot of waste, fraud, and abuse. I evolved into a supporter of the food stamp program based on facts.
It's our responsibility as good citizens and as a government to help give people the means by which they can help themselves. And I think food stamps are one of the tools that we can use.
This is essential that there be at least that kind of safety net to provide food, not just for the elderly and the very young and the helpless, but ordinary citizens who are trying to get on their feet.
We've always had people in need, and we've always tried to address those needs, but never in such a comprehensive way as the food stamp and the Reform Act of 1977.
I still would like to see the food stamp program expanded so that we don't have hard-working, poor families running out of stamps before the end of the month.
The food stamp program has a rich history in helping the nation's poor, and it continues to be our nation's first line of defense against hunger.